This is Greg Finburg from WizardsWave, and you're watching the Ref the District podcast.
Life is good.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Ref the District. I'm Nathan. That's Trev, and that's the Stoner. And today we are sad to present the end of the Washington Wizards season and their preview on review rather on how the season has gone. Obviously, Trev and I are going to have some awful things to say about the team, but Stoner, you watch nearly every minute of the Wiz, good or bad.
That's right.
Although we've saved you from a couple by spoiling some of these awful losses that they've had. What have you appreciated from this season?
What have I appreciated? I've appreciated the development of some of the younger guys. I think Denny took a step forward, not as big as you'd like. Kispert took a huge step forward. Gafford, a younger player, took a step forward. So there's some things to work with there. Have they gotten to the point we need them to be a really good team? No. But there are some positives that we get to take a look at.
Okay. All right. Well, we are going to be taking a couple look at this, and we're going to not do this by ourselves. In fact, we have Greg Finburg joining us here from the WizardsWave. So thank you, Greg, for jumping on with us. And I do have, here's the applause button for you.
Thank you.
So appreciate you jumping on.
Yep.
Greg, we kind of let the cat out of the bag with you beforehand. Stoner's the only true Wizard fan. So a secondary team for myself and Trev. What are your ties to the Wizards, and how disappointed are you with Trev and I?
Well, my ties, I'm originally from New Jersey, but my whole family's from the DMV area. My dad's family's from Fairfax County up in Burke. So, he's been a Bullets fan his whole life, transitioned it over to me and my brother being Wizards fans ever since, John Wall got drafted, since I could watch basketball. So, been a Wizards fan for a while. I wouldn't say I'm disappointed in you guys because you've picked teams that at least aren't as bad as the Wizards, I guess. But, Stoner and I guess, are in it together. We've seen some bad times. So when they do finally become good, we'll be the ones that were there for the long haul.
Yeah, that's right. And that's kind of how we got connected, right? Was through Twitter, and you put out this daily, or this every game, you put out like a preview of what to expect and what you hope to see. And I kind of liked what you were doing there. And so, but tell me how that has now translated from your love of the Wizards to kind of making it part of, I don't want to say your job, but it's part of your passion at this point in what you're doing there at school.
Yeah, so I started this senior year last year in high school. I got Twitter. I followed a bunch of people on Wizards Twitter. I always liked what they were doing, and I'm like, I have a lot of views that I like to share. I only share them with my dad and my brother. I think other people would like to hear them as well. So I just started tweeting. I started following a bunch of people on Wizards Twitter, and it started small. You don't get a lot of engagements when you first start. You're just kind of working your way up. So every time I'd get like 2 comments, I'd be like, this is amazing. Like I just, and it wasn't even like looking at it as if like, this is something I could do. It's just, this is fun for me. I never look at it as a job. And then, eventually it evolves, a lot of people started being sent to my content. A lot of people started following along because they like what I was saying. And it's grown into, I have a couple thousand followers. I have people that I engage with, and it's fun for me. I never really look at it as, I have to tweet out keys to the game, or I have to watch this Wizards game. I'm just doing something that I enjoy doing, which is why, it makes it fun.
Amen.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned this is something you enjoy doing. How much did you enjoy this season from the Wizards? I know that it was, it's a season that did not end in playoffs, which quite a few fans are actually happy with. So we'll definitely get your opinion on whether or not you're happy on that. But what have been the things that you've enjoyed from this Wizards season?
What I've enjoyed, it's a limited list, I'll tell you that. Being able to watch, it's only a couple months out of the year that you don't get to watch. And even in those months, you just like, after probably come May, I'm going to be like, I want to watch this team again, because it's just something that it gives me something to do. But there was some frustrating times. We lost 10 straight games. We won 6 straight games. Then we blew back-to-back 20-point leads. It was just a roller coaster of a season. So if you want to look at some of the positives, we won 6 straight. The win in Minnesota before the All-Star break was amazing, where Brad finally played up to his contract. The win in Dallas was awesome because that was the start of the big winning streak. The loss against Houston last game of the year, one of the best losses I've ever seen, because at that point we were just hoping for losses. So, I mean, not much to really like say that was great about this season, but if you want to be optimistic, those couple games, the 6-game win streak was kind of the high point for me in the season.
Greg, what needs to happen for the Wizards to get back on track of at least winning, and not even making the postseason, but just winning and being a I don't know, not a threat, but
How about the first 50-win season in like 4 decades? Just get to that point.
Like recognized as a team in the East rather than just an NBA team.
Well, we need a point guard. We've needed a point guard for a minute now. You know, we've had like some random people thrown in, like Russ. He was great here, but he's not the long-term future. He's not the answer at point guard. He's gone after a year. You bring in Dinwiddie, who's supposed to be your big free agent signing, and he's gone at the deadline because he's a locker room cancer. You get Monte in the trade, but Monte can't defend. He can't shoot that great from 3. It's all of these like veterans that are okay and we're backups on a lot of teams, but there's no young infusion of talent in at that guard position to pair with Beal. And that's why Beal took a turn this season, because he's having to play so much on ball. He's having to do a lot when he's just so much better off the ball. So that's the first thing. You got to get a point guard. It could be in the draft. You're going to have a top 8, top 9 pick. Maybe you get Anthony Black, Cason Wallace. There's so many good guard prospects in this draft. There's free agents, certainly, that you could look at. Not that great of a class for point guards, but still some free agents. The point guard's number 1. I would personally say fire the coach. I think Wes has done, I wouldn't say a terrible job, but, I mean, he's had a competent roster this first 2 seasons. A team that, I'm not saying he should have won the finals. We don't think we're going to do that. But you shouldn't be 35-47. You shouldn't be 12 games under 500 with 3 all-star caliber players. That shouldn't happen. And the fact that teams like Atlanta are looking at their coach and they're saying, we're in the play-in, we're the 8th seed, and we're firing Nate McMillan because we're not good enough. Whereas we see back-to-back 35-win seasons and say, you know what, that's okay. You get another run of it because we don't feel like paying you not to coach our team. You know, it's a business first for Ted Leonsis. So.
And by the way, Greg, it was just like 2 years ago, Atlanta did the same thing.
Yep.
Just 2 years ago when they were struggling and then ended up going to the Eastern Conference Finals with Nate McMillan. And then here they are 2 years later and say, not good enough. After giving him that contract.
They fired Lloyd Pierce mid-season because Lloyd Pierce wasn't getting it done. I think he had some rifts between him and Trae Young. And then you see a similar situation with McMillan, rifts with Trae Young. The star player's not getting along with the coach and they fire him. And I'll give Woj credit. You know, he lost the locker room in his first year, and it seems like the guys genuinely enjoyed coming into work, and he kind of had a much better vibe around the team this year. But vibes don't mean anything if you aren't good. So you know you can be happy coming to work all you want, but if your team's a failure, that doesn't mean that you need to come back as head coach. So
if it's the head, so it seems like you're kind of pinning this on the coach because you're, you know, obviously NBA more of a player-driven league than some of the other sports. And you mentioned 3 all-star caliber players. Is it all on the coach, or where do the players kind of come into play here? Because if you have 3 all-star caliber players, if you have a legit 1, 2, 3, you're right. You should be at least 500 in this league. So what is it besides Wes Unseld Jr. that's the problem?
It's 4 to 10 on the roster. You have a great 3. You have Brad, Kuz, and KP. KP was amazing this season. Kuz was really good for the first 70 games before he sat the rest. Brad was efficient, not as good as he should have been, and he should have played more games. But realistically, you have 3 good players. It's the depth on this roster that's consistently been the issue, and that falls on the GM, that falls on Tommy Shepard. You know, you want to surround your best players in this league with shooting and defense, and we have none of that. You got Denny, who's a decent defender, but he can't shoot, so I'm just going to leave him open and double Porzingis. Monte can't shoot or get in the paint, and he can't defend. You got guys like Corey that is a great shooter, but for sometimes he's limited on offense, and he's also a defensive liability. There's just, you know, you look at teams like the Pelicans, man. They got Herb Joneses, Brandon Ingrams. They got guys like Trey Murphy. They can shoot and they can defend. That's what you need in this league. And for a team to consistently have as poor of depth as we have, you're never going to win. And you know, some of the blame falls on the coach for not utilizing these players the right way, but it also falls on the GM for not hitting in the draft and and for not getting the core to surround his good players with.
That's
so I'd say it falls on both.
That leads me to that because they brought in Wes Unseld Jr. for a defensive-minded head coach coming from Denver as assistant head coach, and there's no defense at all in the Wizards. And like you said, it falls back on the GM and them to surround. Don't you think they would have looked like how come they picked these people rather than like playing to the coach's strengths, which is defense? They added shooters rather than defense, and so what happened?
That's a good point. You know, you want to surround these guys with people that fit. It's just because a player is like better than one player doesn't mean he's going to fit better on a certain team. And that's been the problem here. We don't have enough guys that do one job really well. They do a bunch of things okay, and that's not what you need in terms of depth. You need a defensive stopper, you need a 3-point specialist, and you need guys that can also do both at a high level. We got guys like Denny that they can pass, they can drive, they can defend, but it's not to a level where you respect it at all. It's to a level where, you know, I'm going to leave him open from 3 and I'm still going to attack him on defense because he can't stop fouling.
Right.
And you would hope that our defense would get better. As you mentioned, he's a defensive head coach. We fire Scott Brooks because he has all the offense, but he has no defense. Scott Brooks had, I think, a 20th ranked defense that Woj inherited. And I think he dropped it to 21st his first year. And I think it dropped to 24th this year. So we're seeing regression instead of progression in the defensive category, which is not what you want to see. And it's kind of an indictment on the guys that hired him in the first place.
If I can, I'm going to push back just a little bit on that. And there are different defensive statistics, but simply in points per game, defensively this year, they were 17th, which I'm not bragging about 17th, but I'm saying I think it has been a little bit of improvement this year. I'm sure there are like defensive ratings that are a little bit different, but just in points per game, offensively seems to be where they struggled, which is crazy when you have 3 guys averaging over 20 points. And I think that goes to your point about it wasn't those 3 guys. They were getting theirs. It's 4 through 10 that didn't seem to be able to do their jobs well enough to win games. And when you've got those 3, you should be able to win more than 35 games.
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
Yeah.
And so with those 4 to 10, you know, there was some hope. You know, Rui was traded away midseason. A lot of people thought that he was going to, you know, turn the corner. Never did. Denny had like a good 3-game stretch, but didn't really put together the season that you'd want in his third season. Corey is who he is, right? Kispert's going to end up just being a spot up shooter, and teams need that. So he's going to get a payday someday. Just because he's going to shoot 35% from or better from 3. But where, you know, these are their young guys. And then they drafted, you mentioned earlier about drafting, needing a point guard, drafting some guy. They drafted Johnny Davis, who Stoner thinks even just after 1 season is a bust.
I do.
Where do you stand with Johnny Davis and these developmental players that Washington keeps getting into because they either just missed the playoffs or they get into the play-in, and so they're not getting those lottery picks that you see that teams need to turn around that 1 through 4 in a draft. Where are we going with the Kisperts, the Denny's, the Johnny Davises of the world? And is Johnny Davis a bust after 1 season?
Well, I'll start with this. This is what I always say. We're never good enough to compete. We're never good enough to get a top pick. You know, those guys are all good players. Rui, Denny, Corey, they're solid. They're decent role players in the league, but they're never going to be anything more than that. And that's just what you're going to get from 6 to like 12 or 6 to 14 in the lottery. Those impact players that can become a top option on your team, you only get those if you commit to tanking or you commit to sending your pieces off to get top picks. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, it's all Tommy's fault that Rui didn't pan out. You know, Rui had injuries. He took time off. You know, he had the COVID year. A lot of things went into that. But Rui's a solid player. Corey's been really good in terms of shooting. Denny's been good, but they're not good enough. And that's been the problem here. There's no direction with this franchise. You're not going to be getting guys like your Paolo Bancheros or your Zion Williamses, John Morants that can turn around a franchise if you're just the 11th, 12th seed every season and you're picking from the 7 to 10 range. So that's what I say about that. In terms of Johnny Davis, I don't know if I'd say bust just yet, but it looked pretty bleak in the beginning. The one thing I will say is that when he was drafted, Tommy Shepard came out and said he's the most NBA ready prospect. And because we feel like we have a roster that can win now, we wanted to draft someone that could come in and contribute right away. It was the complete opposite. He needed 60 games down in the G League before he could come up here and even do anything remotely good in the league. And it took him 4 to 5 games to kind of get in a rhythm for the last 5 games to average a decent bit of points and rebounds. And even with that, the shooting numbers are god awful.
Mm-hmm.
He still can't shoot the three. He's got a slow release. He's not as consistent as you'd want him to be from that area. And again, in today's NBA, if you can't shoot, you're really hurting your team in terms of how they space the floor. So I don't know if I'd say bust just yet, but if he doesn't contribute next season the way we hope for him to, then you might have to start looking at options.
Greg, I don't see anything to give me hope with him. I mean, he doesn't have explosion. He's not going to go by guys. He's not going to shoot lights out. He's going to maybe defend decently.
Hey, he had a posterizing dunk on Drew Holiday, remember?
he definitely did. But
Yeah,
I know those guys got on my case when I hyped that up a little. But I mean, that last game against Houston, when you're basically playing a G League game, they're playing a bunch of G League guys, or not all end of the roster guys. You're playing a lot of end of the roster guys.
Yeah.
And he shoots 3 for 15 from 3. And if you watched him, probably 10 of those were wide open, nobody coming at him. 3-point shots that he couldn't hit.
Nerves, baby.
And I don't think it's nerves. I just don't think it's any good. So I was just stating my case for
the
Davis
early
being a bust.
for
'Cause I
leading
just
the
don't see
train
anything.
on him being a bust.
I mean, I can look at
He's
that.
top 10 too, yeah.
I can look at the guys for Houston, some of them who are G Leaguers. I can see explosion. I can see something out there that, this guy, Christopher, that dude, I'm like, this guy can develop. Or even on our own squad, Quentin Jackson is a guy that I kind of like because he has athleticism. Johnny Davis looks like me out there.
You got
and
Jay
you
Hunt.
don't want me out there on the basketball court. I'm telling you that right
Yeah,
now.
that's fair. I can't really argue with what you're saying. Can't argue.
So anyway, looking forward now to next season.
Yes.
If Tommy gets his way, he's going to re-sign KP. He's going to re-sign Kuzma. So eventually you're bringing the band back together again. The only guys who are not under contract, again, assuming they sign those two, are going to be Nunn and Taj Gibson. Guys, throwaway guys anyway. So why should we expect this team with basically the exact same roster? Why should we expect anything better than 35 or 47 next year?
I don't think you should.
Okay, there you go.
I mean, we've been mocked to have 35, 34 wins by Vegas for the past 4 years. And I mean, it's my fault. Every year I trick myself into thinking we could be good, but that's just what I'm going to do as a fan. You got to be optimistic. But there's definitely some things you could try to do. I mean, to start, we have a top pick. You never know. I think whoever the 7th best odds always crack the top 4 in 8 of the last 10 drafts, I believe I saw on Twitter. So, there's a good shot that we get up. Knowing our luck, we'll probably drop to 9 just because it's us. But it starts with that. You can get an impact player. And if you get one of the top guard prospects, that sets you up for a little bit of future success at that position. Maybe he can come in and contribute right away. And there's certain contracts you might be able to trade as well. We're going to have to kind of finagle around the cap because we'll be right around that luxury tax again. There's guys like DeLon Wright and Monte Morris making $9 mil, $8 mil respectively. You don't want to trade a guy like DeLon, but when you have Goodwin making $1 to $2 million per year, he can do pretty much what DeLon does. Not as high of a level, but it's not a $6 million talent gap. So if a team wants DeLon's talents, they want his on-ball defense, I would be inclined to trade DeLon because we need that cap space to fill out our roster. Taj Gibson's not coming back. You need to find cheap options like Jay Huff, who maybe can come back. He showed a little bit last season. I mean, I know I sound crazy tricking myself into Jay Huff being on my team, but we got to find just these little nuggets of players that you can get on cheap deals, because when you're sinking 120 million into 3 players, you're not going to have a competent 4 to 10. And that's what I've been saying is the problem. you pay these guys so much money, you can't really fill out a roster with too much talent other than those 3 guys, and that's why we've had so many issues.
Greg, real quick, you're in charge of the Wizards. Looking forward, how do you get people with semi-big names to come play for the Wizards this year?
I mean, I can if I have no cap space because people want money first and foremost. I mean, it was if you want to let Kuz walk. I mean, if Kuz wants 30 mil plus, I don't know if I pay Kuz 30 mil.
Nah.
I think Kuz is worth 20 mil, and I'd be willing to pay him 25 just because, as the Wizards, I literally told this guy, you can demand whatever you want. I'm going to pay it by trading Rui and by literally openly saying we're going to bring you back, like in whatever way we can. But I mean, you got to push the fact that Kristaps had one of his best seasons in his entire career. He was unreal this year. He's available. Brad is, according to Tommy, entering his prime. I don't know about that, but Brad's still a high-level player. You got some young talent, and I guess you just try to ship the fact that maybe we can crack 40-plus wins this season, but I think firing the coach would have gone a long way. So if I had to do something, I would fire the coach.
Yeah, it's funny because we talked a lot about the 4 to the 10 being bad, but kind of mine and Trev's point of view here is really your number one's not a number one. Your number one is realistically a 2 as far as things consider, as far as like when you're talking about being the guy. Bradley Beal would be a great part to another team. Think like Paul George with Leonard out in the Clips type deal. And then you're talking about KP, who's probably best being even at his best is like a 3rd option, and Kuzma can be a number 2 option as well. So is there any hope that with a bunch of 2 and 3 kind of guys, that you're going to get maybe a superstar season out of Bradley Beal that takes you to that next level? Or, as Trev and I believe, should the Wizards, and they're not going to, we know that they're not going to, but should they cut ties with Bradley Beal and find a way for them to move on from that contract?
Yes. Well, ultimately, he's got the no trade clause. So even if we wanted to trade him, I don't know how inclined he'd be. I mean, maybe he wants, I'd say maybe LA and Miami are 2 teams that he would consider waiving the no trade for. But the problem with that is you don't just say we want you gone. Like, someone needs to take on this guy's contract. There's a reason we were the only team dumb enough to pay him $50 million per year. No team even wanted to offer him a max contract. He had no suitors in the offseason, so he came running back to DC. I mean, if Brad genuinely wants to leave, he can leave. We'll work something out. Will we get any competent return? Probably not. Maybe a 1st-round pick and then some salary cap relief so we don't have to pay him. But if we were a proactive organization, we would have traded him 2 years ago when we could have gotten 4 pick swaps, 4 first-round picks, a bunch of young talent. We could like a Paul George-esque trade package where you see the Thunder are now set up and they're way ahead of schedule, and Chet Holmgren hasn't even played. They have 15,000 picks for the next 6-7 years.
You mentioned not getting a good pick, past like 10, but Jalen Williams at 12 has been just an outstanding.
Which one?
Rookie.
Yeah, which one?
The one they picked at 12, not the second rounder.
He's been great. I saw him mocked. A lot of people I saw that I follow on Twitter wanted him. They liked his game coming out of college, but we all knew we were going to draft Johnny Davis. He's the safe option.
Gosh,
the most,
and you need a guard, and
that was a whoop. That was a
kind of
pick.
Similar, Greg. I kind of leading into that a little bit is if for whatever reason the gods smile, the lottery balls bounce Washington's way, they end up with the number one. The number 1 pick this year is not a point guard. Do they go with the superstar pick, or do they trade, or do
That's
they
an insane
take?
question.
They have to
take the superstar.
Oh yeah, of course.
You have to take him. Is the fit right? No.
Tommy Shepard's there though, so is he going to be that smart to do that?
You have KP. I mean, you have to take him. He's a generational talent. You have to, unless a team gives you every single pick that they have, like the Thunder give you 5 first-round picks, and like you can trade back to like 2. You still get Scoot Henderson, and you get so many picks.
Yo, that could work.
It could work, but I don't know if I could live with myself if I had the chance to get Wembanyama and I didn't get him.
But what happens if you get Wembanyama and he's another Chet Holmgren?
I mean, that's unfortunate. It's the deal. You have to take him. Like, he's the best player by far. He's probably the most touted prospect since LeBron. So I don't think you could pass him up.
Yep. Can't do that. You can't pass up catching Greg with his own content on WizardWave. Greg, where can they find you?
On Twitter, just my username at Greg Finburg. I post my WizardsWave blog. There's a link in my bio. I post it every Wednesday at 12:30. So just follow along for that. And then the season's over, but I always live tweet the games. I'm always tweeting about the Wizards. So if you want to follow me for Wizards content, I'm the guy.
It's good stuff, Greg. Keep it up. I really enjoy your content.
We appreciate you jumping on here with us, Greg. Thanks very kindly. Hopefully we have some good conversation coming out for the draft, for the NBA draft, and this next season. Maybe the Wizards will turn around. We'll see. And if they ever fire Woj, we're calling you, and we have to have that conversation as well. So thanks, Greg, for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me on. Appreciate it.
Appreciate
All right.
it.
I'm Nathan. That's Trev. That's the Stoner. And Greg, thank you again. But until next time.
Yes, sir.
Be a fan.
Here we go.